Live stream look good. Sergeant, can you check and make sure that we are in the correct Zoom room?
On it, one moment. We are good, and we are in speaker view.
Thanks.
Good
Thank you.
morning.
1 minute, Chair.
Recording to the PC on the way.
Call recording started. Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council remote hearing on the Committee on Contracts jointly with the Committee on Small Business and the Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency. At this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, all panelists, please turn on your videos. Thank you. If you wish to minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining our virtual hearing today. Welcome to the New York City Council's Committee on Contracts. Today is Monday, April 4th, 2022. My name is Julie Won, and I have the privilege of chairing this committee. We're holding this hearing jointly with the Council's Committee on Small Businesses, chaired by Councilmember Julie Menin, and the Council's Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency, chaired by Councilmember Francisco Moya. I'd like to also thank and note that we've been joined by the council members, Councilmember Caban, Councilmember Ung, Majority Whip Brooks Powers, as well as Councilmember Brennan. I'd like to, before we begin, I would like to extend my thanks to Councilmember Brennan for his continued support of minority and women-owned businesses as the sponsor of the legislation before the committee today. The City Council has long supported the city's minority and women-owned businesses, also known as MWBEs, and through its various initiatives, the Council has assisted the MWBE program in expanding their role both in city procurement and the private sector. In 2005, the city established this MWBE program in its current form in order to address the disparities in city procurement between the number of minority and women-owned businesses available to do business with the city and the number that are actually awarded city contracts. In the years since, the council has lobbied the last few mayoral and state administrations and passed several bills in order to modify the city's MWBE program to better meet the needs of the MWBE community. This has resulted in increasing the city's non-competitive small purchase limit for MWBEs to $500,000, the inclusion of Native American-owned firms in the city's MWBE procurement goals for the first time, and the registration of over 11,000 certified MWBEs citywide. Unfortunately, more than 84% of those certified firms have never been awarded a city contract. The previous mayoral administration regularly boasted the success of its outreach efforts to expand the number of certified firms, but we on this committee believe it is the responsibility of this new administration to close the gap between certified MWBEs and those firms who actually receive city contracts. We know the Department of Small Business Services regularly updates its MWBE database as new firms are certified, but we on the committee would like to know what SBS does after that to get those firms awarded city contracts. We know that SBS offers training, networking, and business development programs, but what about on the agency side? Each contracting agency was appointed a chief diversity officer in 2020 to assist agency contracting staff in selecting MWBEs for contract awards. How has that played out in practice, and what has the experience been for contracting agencies so far? And I also want to acknowledge that Councilmember Narcisse and Councilmember Rivera have also joined us. Thank you so much. As well as Councilmember Linda Lee. We know that the city has a stated goal of 30% procurement from MWBE citywide, but each year the city falls far short of that goal. According to the city comptroller, 11.3% of contract spending citywide has gone to certified MWBEs through the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 2020. While this is an increase of over the 9.6% rate of fiscal year 2021, it's still far short of the 30% MWBE contracting goal. Further, only a handful of city agencies are shouldering the load for the administration's responsibility for MWBE contracting. While we commend the best performing agencies this fiscal year, the School Construction Authority, the Department of Education, the Department of Mental Hygiene, to name a few, much more remains to be done to ensure other mayoral agencies are also working towards the 30% utilization goal. During the roughly 16 months of emergency procurements conducted pursuant to Mayor de Blasio's declared emergency from March 2020 to July 2021, the city spent over $3.5 billion in COVID-related goods and services. And out of the 3.5, only $554 million, about 16%, went to MWBEs. This means that even when the city's regular procurement rules pertaining to competitive sealed bidding were suspended, contracts were still awarded to MWBEs only 16% of the time. Further, at least 5 agencies, including SBS, did no business at all with MWBEs for their COVID-related contracts during that time. How can we entrust an agency like SBS with improving and expanding MWBE procurement when the very same agency close to do zero business with MWBEs when there were no restrictions in place to prevent them from doing so? In fact, 2 agencies alone made up more than 40% of the city's total pandemic-related spending. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services and the Department of Sanitation combined to do the most business with MWBEs during the declared state of emergency. Others like SBS, the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, shockingly chose to do none. We on the committee applaud the work being done by agencies who strive to improve their MWBE utilization numbers, but instead of highlighting the agencies with the greatest success, this administration should hold underperforming agencies accountable and do whatever it takes to improve their utilization rates. The committee does not expect full MWBE utilization from every agency, but when the rate from emergency procurement is at 0, it speaks volumes about the lack of effort to fulfill the goals of the MWBE program on the part of those agencies. We hope this hearing will provide the committees with an opportunity to discuss some of those roadblocks these underperforming agencies are having towards improving their MWBE contracting and what steps the new administration can take to improve those numbers. Like the mayor, we are committed to reaching 30% utilization. Let's work to improve these MWBE utilization rates so we can get there together. And finally, I'd like to thank the committee staff, Legislative Counsel Alex Polinoff, Senior Policy Analyst Leah Skritzbiak, and Finance Unit Head John Russell for all their hard work in prepping for this hearing. I'll now turn over the floor to Councilmember Julie Menin, the Chair of Small Business Committee, for her opening remarks. And saying MWBE this many times is quite a tongue twister. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair, for your remarks. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Julie Menin, and I'm the Chair of the Committee on Small Business. And I want to welcome you to our joint oversight and legislative hearing today with my colleagues, Councilmember Juan, Chair of the Committee on Contracts, and Councilmember Moya, Chair of the Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency. The oversight portion of our hearing today will focus on the impacts of the pandemic on MWBEs. From the Small Business Committee perspective, I'm interested in a productive conversation on how we can jumpstart the recovery of minority-owned businesses and increase utilization rates of MWBEs at city agencies. To start, the city's MWBE contracting system, including the certification of businesses as minority and women-owned and agencies contracting with these businesses, relies on the existence of a thriving marketplace of women and minority-owned businesses. As the Committee on Small Business covered in our hearing last month, minority-owned businesses have been disproportionately impacted by the economic devastation caused by the pandemic, due in part to difficulty qualifying for pandemic financial relief programs. According to national data, Black-owned businesses were more than twice as likely to close than white-owned businesses. A controller survey from June 2020 found that 25% of MWBEs surveyed did not apply for federal or city funding because of restrictive application criteria to qualify for aid. Businesses did not want to subject themselves to debt or high interest rates, and a lack of outreach and awareness of existing programs, and program funds were also exhausted before they could apply, none of, frankly, which are acceptable. MWBs are also struggling to recover from the pandemic due to the paucity in city contracts they are receiving. In fiscal year 2021, only around 4% of city contract money went to MWBEs. According to the controllers making the grade report, an annual report that grades each agency's success in meeting MWBE utilization goals outlined in Local Law 178 of 2019, the city received an overall grade of C- in fiscal year 2021, down from a C in fiscal year 2020. The city has consistently performed poorly with contracting with Black-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, getting a grade of F for Black-owned businesses every year for the past 5 fiscal years, and a letter grade of D every year for the past 5 fiscal years for women-owned businesses. I am deeply concerned about these figures and look forward to productive conversation today on how the new administration is working to improve the MWBE contracting system. As a former small business owner myself who would have qualified for MWBE status, I have seen firsthand that the city did little to improve outreach to small businesses to let them know about this economic opportunity. I'm concerned, quite frankly, that there's been a lack of outreach by SBS to let businesses know about this important certification opportunity. And further compounding this feeling is that agency leadership is not aware of the robust information available about the various MWBEs available to their respective agencies. As Chair Wan mentioned, according to the same controller's report, 5 agencies dealt exclusively with non-MWBEs for their COVID-19 related contracts, including Health and Hospitals, Department of Parks, Financial Information Services Agency, Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, and the Department of Small Business Services. This is totally unacceptable. The fact, quite honestly, that we're having an oversight hearing over the agency that is responsible for MWBEs and that during COVID did not even issue a single MWBE is shocking, to say the least. So we really are going to be getting into that. I'm hopeful to hear about how the new administration will facilitate and expedite the process for a minority or women-owned business to get certified as an MWBE. I have heard extensively from the small business community that SBS's certification process is too arduous and that the agency should be doing more to make the certification process much simpler and less complex. I look forward to hearing from advocates today about issues that they are aware of with the MWBE system and steps that the administration should take to improve the system. With that said, I want to thank my central staff team, Senior Counsel Stephanie Jones, Senior Policy Analyst Noah Meixler, my Chief of Staff Jonathan Shutt, and Legislative and Budget Director Zarina Dochev for their incredibly hard work. I'd now like to turn it over to Councilmember Moya, Chair of the Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency, to deliver an opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you to Chairs Wan and Menon and everyone that's joining us today. I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we've been also been joined by Council Members Brewer and Ariola. Good morning, I'm Councilmember Francisco Moya. I'm Chair of the Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency. Again, I'd like to just thank my chairs for presenting this very important meeting that we have today. And as my co-chairs have shared, we want to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on minority and women-led businesses and how we can ensure a more equitable future for MWBEs. We are at the 2-year mark of this pandemic, and particularly for me, who lives and represents the district that was the epicenter of COVID-19, It's been heartbreaking to see firsthand how it's altered my community's physical, emotional, and financial health. The impact of COVID-19 is ongoing and all-encompassing. Since the start of the pandemic, over 26,000 businesses in New York City have closed permanently, with smaller minority-owned businesses disproportionately impacted. That's why part of the work that I did to help provide some relief and fight food insecurity was getting funding and making efforts with partnerships with the Hispanic Federation to support a series of restaurants, mom and pop shops in the district, as well as introducing and passing legislation that capped the exorbitant delivery fees that third-party apps were charging restaurants in New York City. A major cause of the disparity in business closure is due to greater difficulties minority-owned businesses have had accessing financial relief programs during the pandemic. For example, in June 2020, a comptroller survey found that only 40% of MWBE certified businesses applied to SBS's Small Business Continuity Loan Program. Very few received a loan or similar support. In fact, 25% of the MWBEs surveyed did not apply for federal or city funding because of the restrictive application criteria to qualify for aid. They did not want to subject themselves to debt or higher interest rates. There was a lack of outreach and awareness of existing programs, and the program funds were exhausted before they could even apply. There were also equity issues with the rollout of the PPP program. I saw firsthand how small businesses in my community, particularly businesses serving, supporting, and operated by immigrants and those with limited English proficiency, struggled. Many did not know where to go for help while there were programs and support services in place. They seemed inaccessible, and we can do more to support the MWBEs, especially those that require language access service. Despite having so many businesses certified as MWBEs, we continue to see immense disparities in access to city contracts, with only around 4% of the city's contract money going to MWBEs in fiscal year 2021, and that's just unacceptable. I would like to know exactly what the city is doing to target businesses in districts like mine that were most impacted by COVID-19 to ensure that they have the support that they need to succeed, both generally and specifically with regards to obtaining city contracts. While the city has gone to great lengths to address the health of the communities disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, it is still unclear to me how the same lens is applied to small businesses, which are the lifeblood of so many hardworking individuals that are just struggling to stay afloat. We need to do a better job looking back and analyzing who was impacted and how, such as studying impacts based on ethnicity, languages spoken, and other demographics, as well as looking ahead to ensure that these issues are meaningfully addressed. We must do better, and that's why I just want to again thank my co-chairs as well as the committee members and the members of the COVID-19 subcommittee for joining our hearing today. And I would also like to thank the committee staff for their great work on this issue. Sarah Les, Harbani, Harbani, I'm so sorry. Harbani, Harbani, I just messed up your last name. I'm so sorry. And then M. Bulkin and Lauren Hunt, Megan Taddeo, Harbani Hayuja, and again, I want to turn it over to our committee staff, the council staff as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Alex Polinoff. I'm counsel to the Contracts Committee of the New York City Council. Before we get into testimony today, I would just like to remind everyone that you'll be on mute until you're called upon to testify, at which point you'll be unmuted by the host. I'll be calling on the panelists to testify in order, so please listen for your name to be called. The first panelist to give testimony today will be the Deputy Commissioner for Economic and Financial Opportunity at the Department of Small Business Services, Dinah Schall-Gross, the Chief of Staff of the Mayor's Office of Contract Services, Kim Yu, and the Deputy Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises, Ji Kwan, as well as the Deputy Director of Agency Engagement of Operations at the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Businesses, Johnny Celestin, will all be available for questioning. I will call upon each of you shortly when it is time to begin your testimony. During the hearing, if council members would like to raise a question of the administration or of a specific panelist, please use the Zoom raise hand function and we will call on you in order. We will be limiting, council member questions to 5 minutes. which includes the time it takes to answer those questions. So please note that for the ease of this virtual hearing, we will not be allowing a second round of questions for each panelist outside of the committee chairs. As a reminder, all hearing participants should submit their written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Before we begin testimony, I will administer the oath. To all members of the administration who will be offering testimony or who will be available for questions, please raise your right hands now. I will call on each of you individually for a response. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee today, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Deputy Commissioner Gross. Can we unmute the Deputy Commissioner, please?
I do.
Thank you. Chief of Staff Yu.
I do.
Deputy Director Kwan.
I do.
And Deputy Director Celestin.
I do.
Thank you. Deputy Director Gross, you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. And good morning, Chairs Menon, Juan, Moya, and members of the committees on small business, contracts, and COVID recovery and resiliency. My name is Dinah Shell Gross, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Division of Economic and Financial Opportunity, or DFO, at the Department of Small Business Services, SBS. I'm joined today by G. Kwan and Johnny Celestin from the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises, and Kim Yu, Chief of Staff at the Mayor's Office of Contract Services. And I'm pleased to testify today about the performance of the city's Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise, or MWBE program, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. SBS aims to unlock economic potential and create economic security for all New Yorkers by connecting them to good jobs, creating stronger businesses, and building vibrant neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. In pursuing this mission, DFO is focused on ensuring the meaningful participation of businesses owned by individuals from groups that have been demonstrated to have been underutilized in the government procurement process. MOCS, OMWBE, and a host of city agencies and non-mayoral entities are our close partners in this work. SBS works to attract firms to the MWBE program, to assess their eligibility for certification, and to support their success in government procurement through business education, technical assistance, and other capacity building initiatives. Through these interventions, we increase their participation in public sector contracting and help these businesses survive and grow. In 2021, 70% of the certified MWBEs that won a contract with the city had used an SBS service beforehand. In addition, we help to ensure city buyers can connect with certified firms and have the training and guidance to meet their MWBE program obligations. I invite you to visit the recently updated online directory of certified firms at nyc.gov/BUY certified by certified to learn about the excellent firms that participate in the city's MWBE program. There are currently more than 10,700 MWBEs certified by New York City, a number that has doubled since 2018. 56% of those firms are woman-owned, with the remaining 45% majority owned by men. 31% of firms are Black-owned, 21% are Asian-owned, 17% are Hispanic-owned, less than 1% are Native American-owned, and 30% of MWBEs are owned by non-minority women. The COVID-19 pandemic created new challenges for government, for the private sector, especially small businesses, and for our city's neighborhoods and residents. The MWBE program proved to be an important and flexible tool, contributing to the city's response and supporting the survival of MWBE firms. SBS transitioned to an online MWBE application system pre-pandemic in December 2018. This change has been critical to the program's growth, and it allowed the work of certification to continue uninterrupted after SBS's office closed in March of 2020. We also transitioned quickly to virtual delivery of business education, capacity building, and technical assistance services, meeting our MWBE clients wherever they were with the supports they required. This included continuing intensive programs like the Bond Readiness Cohort, which helps businesses qualify for or increase their bonding to support performance on larger construction contracts. We expanded the content of our Selling to Government business education portfolio to include the full contracting process, from bidding to negotiations and through performance, closeout, and subsequent audits. We also launched an MWBE peer mentoring program, giving newer MWBEs access to expertise developed by predecessors who have experienced success in the program. Nearly 800 MWBEs attended these mentor sessions in FY21. Self-identified MWBEs and those in our certified pool were included in all of the work SBS did to help small businesses survive the financial impacts caused by public health related closures, restrictions, and supply chain interruptions. For example, 2 industry partnerships led by SBS, the New York City Manufacturing and Industrial Innovation Council, and the Tech Talent Pipeline partnered to rapidly create the Make Reopening Supplies Marketplace, an online listing developed to help local businesses find personal protective equipment. 33% of the suppliers listed in that marketplace were MWBEs. We were able to revise the terms for the Contract Financing and Loan Fund for MWBEs, reducing the interest rate from 3% to 0% for emergency contract performance. Since the inception of that program in 2017 through the second quarter of FY22, 147 contract financing loans have been awarded with a total value of $35,906,000. 34 of those valued at $8,404,000 were 0% loans awarded during the pandemic. Executive Order 59, issued on July 28th of 2020, encouraged all city agencies to procure goods, services, and construction from MWBEs for amounts up to $500,000. It also provided for city agencies to set MWBE participation goals for contracts relating to COVID-19 response, and required agencies to consider at least one quote from an MWBE before awarding a contract related to the COVID-19 response. Finally, it required the appointment of a chief diversity officer in all city agencies. Executive Order 59 is one example of the kind of innovation that has characterized the city's pursuit of increased equity through the MWBE program. Other innovations have included seeking and winning the authority to increase the threshold for discretionary contracting from $20,000 to $500,000, and creating the 1NYC program with added MWBE spending goals for non-mayoral agencies. The impact of these changes can be measured in dollars and cents. The city has awarded over $21.4 billion, or 86% of the total 10-year $25 billion target to MWBEs under the 1NYC program since the start of FY15 and through the end of FY21. Without a doubt, there's more work to be done, and Mayor Adams shares this belief and has laid out a bold recovery plan with a focus on equity and inclusivity to provide opportunity to every New Yorker. Rebuild, Renew, Reinvent, a blueprint for New York City's economic recovery, lays out 5 pillars and more than 70 concrete initiatives to create opportunities, connect more MWBEs to city contracts, and help speed recovery. Some key MWBE items from the plan include upgrading MWBE oversight, data collection, and compliance to improve outcomes, including improvements to data systems at the Mayor's Office of Contract Services and new dashboards for contracting agencies. calling on the state legislature to raise the discretionary threshold for MWBE non-competitive small purchase contracts to $1.5 million, building out the MWBE program at the New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA. NYCHA's $2 billion procurement budget presents a major opportunity for MWBEs. The Mayor's Office of MWBE will work closely with NYCHA to implement MWBE pre-qualified lists, launch a comprehensive vendor mentorship and apprenticeship program, and improve NYCHA's vendor outreach and communications. Another point in the blueprint is expanding the use of MWBE only PQLs, or pre-qualified lists. PQLs offer an excellent opportunity to direct city spending strategically and exclusively to MWBEs. The Mayor's Office of MWBE will partner with city agencies to strategically identify contracting areas that have a high number of proven MWBE firms, build out and maintain a list of pre-qualified firms, and get contracts in the pipeline that use these pre-qualified lists. The final blueprint item to discuss today is that we'll be working to amend MWBE program rules to recognize the MWBE status of firms certified as MWBEs by other governmental entities. We will also work with our state, MTA, and Port Authority partners to help them respond in kind, expediting certification for any firm that is already certified by the City of New York. Now for a moment, I would like to turn to the proposed bill, Intro 14. Data that reveals the existence of disparity between the presence of willing and capable firms in the city's geographic market and the actual participation of those firms in city procurement is the foundation of our MWBE program. Transparency in sharing data on those disparities and in our efforts to close them are pillars of the city's MWBE program philosophy. So we certainly share Council's belief that the data we rely on and share should be as current as possible. At the same time, we understand the complexity of performing and delivering a robust and reliable disparity study. For those reasons, we support the spirit of the proposal and hope to work with you over the course of the legislative process to craft a bill that addresses these concerns in a practicable manner. The city is committed to making New York a more equitable and inclusive place for MWBEs to operate. We know that working closely with the council is critical to achieving this shared goal. Together, we can seize on the immense opportunities from the city's annual contracting and provide opportunity to more MWBEs. I look forward to our continued partnership and thank you for your time today. And we welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Gross. We'll now turn it over to the questions from the chairs. Panelists from the administration, please stay unmuted if possible during this question and answer period. And a reminder to the chairs that you will be in control of muting and unmuting yourselves during this period. Chair Wan, you may begin when ready.
Thank you so much to the Deputy Commissioner. I also want to acknowledge Councilmember Williams for joining. Thank you so much, as well as Councilmember Velasquez. I'm going to start with my questions for Mox. What percentage of procurement necessary to respond to the COVID-19 state of emergency were exempt from MWBE participation goals? So that question was for you, Chief of Staff Kim Yu.
Yes, thank you, Chair Wan. And thank you so much for having this hearing so that we can talk about this very important topic. And deep congratulations on the birth of your child. I watched that very closely because my child was also born in March. So wonderful to see you. I actually, in coordination with my my partners who are testifying with me today, I would love maybe to defer a bit to the Office of MWBE, and then I'm also happy to sort of add to the Office of MWBE's response, if that is acceptable to the chair.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. Thank you for inviting SBS, Mox, and the Office of MWBEs to speak more about the city's work with MWBEs. To answer your specific question, while emergency contracts are normally exempt from MWBE goal requirements, and procurement rules were temporarily suspended during the COVID-19 state of emergency, Executive Order 59 was effected to push for MWBE participation beyond the usual parameters of the MWBE program during this unprecedented time. Per the Mayor's Executive Order 59, released in July 28th, 2020, OMWBE, in partnership with MOX and SBS, reviewed all emergency contracts submitted to us for two main things meant to increase MWBE participation. One, did the agency consider at least one quote from a city certified MWBE? And two, did the agency do a comprehensive analysis of MWBE availability to provide the goods, services, or construction needed on an emergency basis? And if the analysis demonstrated availability, the agencies worked with the vendors to negotiate MWBE participation for the needed work. We reviewed each opportunity with the contracting agency, and again, where the availability analysis deemed it feasible, made sure that agencies engaged with the MWBE community and negotiated with vendors around MWBE utilization, either as prime contractors or as subcontractors.
Thank you. Chief of Staff Kim Yu, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? Or Deputy Director John? Or should I move on to the next question? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. For capital projects contracted valued at over 25 million, what percentage of those were divided up into smaller contracts by MOX?
Thank you, Chair Juan. So I'll tack this question a bit just by taking a step back. So generally speaking, very large contracts, particularly contracts over $25 million, we do look as a city to break up those contracts. The idea being that if we break up such a large contract, that it will result in multiple contracts, and it will increase the ability for vendors to compete, and hopefully MWBE vendors. So we continue to look to do this, particularly in technology contracts and construction contracts. So it's something that we've been doing and we're looking to do more of in the future.
Okay, but do you have the percentage amount? Like what percentage of those were actually divided out of 25 million?
It's a very good question. I think that for the purposes of this for this hearing, we didn't pull that specific data point, but I'm happy to take that that request back, and we'll share the information as a follow-up with your office.
Sounds good. I know that we just talked about the Executive Order 59 from Mayor Bill de Blasio. It encourages city agencies to use their power under Section 311 of the city charter to award contracts under $500,000 to MWBEs without a formal competitive process, which I know that you were saying that the city was pushing for. So can you give us a little bit more extensive detail on to what extent the city agencies have used this power, and if so, which agencies? And then second part of the question, and I could repeat this again because I know this is a three-part question. Has there been an uptick in MWBE small purchase contracting since the chief diversity officers were appointed? And has there been a noticeable change in MWBE's contracting at agencies that were severely underperforming?
Sure, Chair Juan. Again, I would, if it's acceptable, I'm going to defer to our Office of OMWBE, and then I'm happy to jump in and add more detail at the conclusion of her response.
Thank you for muting me. So I can tackle from the start, and then if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask. When an agency has a purchasing need under 500,000 and there's MWBE availability to provide those services and/or construction, agencies have been using MWBE non-competitive small purchase award method wherever practicable. Since its inception in March of 2018, the city agencies have awarded over 3,500 contracts valued at over 322 million through the end of February 2022. The original MWBE small purchase method was first launched in March 2018 as the innovative procurements. And the CDOs were appointed in August of 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. So to get to your question about the uptick in MWBE small purchases since the chief diverse officer appointed, it's tough to say if the appointment of CDOs have had a direct effect on the rate of awards using the MWBE method. But what we can say is that although there was a slight decrease in the number of MWBE small purchase awards during the emergency period, the total value of awards to MWBEs using the method remained fairly steady through the emergency period, mostly because the average award value increased, again, due to the increase in the threshold from 150,000 to 500,000. So while the number of awards during the emergency period decreased slightly, the average award value increased. So from about 80,000 in fiscal year 20 to about 104,000 in fiscal 21. One last thing to note, in fiscal year 21, quarter 4, that's April through June of 2021, 1 year into the COVID emergency, approximately 34 million was awarded using the MWBE non-competitive small purchase method, which was the highest dollar value of any quarter since the method's inception. If you have any other questions, hopefully I addressed your questions there.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Ji Kwon. To follow up, I know that we heard early on that Department of Sanitation and Department of Education were primary examples of stellar use of MWBEs and trying to meet the utilization goals. For other agencies, could you help us understand to what extent those city agencies have used executive order power to make sure that they were hitting their utilization goals for MWBEs, which they weren't, and why you may think that they were unable to?
Sure. So I think when we talk about utilization here, we're not necessarily talking about percentage, but the use of MWBEs during the emergency period, specifically with the MWBE non-competitive small purchase method. We don't believe that this is necessarily a question of underperforming agencies. When an agency has a purchasing need under 500,000, and again, when there is matching MWBE availability to provide those goods, services, or construction that's needed, agencies have been using the MWBE non-competitive method wherever practicable. For example, DOIT, DOHMH, DEP, DSNY, DOT, FDNY, these are all agencies with the highest total value of awards, each with over 20 million in awards using the MWBE non-competitive small purchase method specifically, and DOIT with the highest, I think, with over 30 million awards. And as a reminder, these are all awards between 20,000 and 500,000. In terms of those agencies, in addition to DSNY, DOE, I would say that DOIT also had a very high number of awards along with DOHMH, which I think you mentioned, and DAP.
Thank you. To go deeper into talking about the Chief Diversity Officer that we just discussed lightly, in 2020, Mayor Bill de Blasio established the Chief Diversity Officers for those who, from the general public who may not know, and every city agency in order to combat inequity in our city. Did all city agencies appoint a Chief Diversity Officer or Chief MWBE Officer by August 2020, which was the deadline of the Executive Order 59? Yes, Deputy Director?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Wan. The straight answer to your question is yes. And the list is currently published on OMWBE's website.
Okay. And I also want to acknowledge Councilmember Nurse for joining us. Thank you so much. And I have 3 follow-up questions for Chief Diversity Officer. How does the city hold the chief diversity officers accountable for their agency meeting their MWBE goals?
Accountability is a collaborative effort between each agency's CDOs, the commissioner, the MWBE officer, ACOs, and the program team. And this is done in partnership with OMWBE, MOCS, and SBS. Additionally, CDOs are meant to have a direct reporting line to their commissioner, and the director of OMWBE has regularly scheduled monthly meetings with most CDOs and meets more frequently with CDOs of select larger agencies like DDC. OMWBE, SBS, and MOCS also hosts monthly MWBE trainings, which are designed to empower CDOs, MWBE officers, ACOs, and program staff in meeting their MWBE goals.
Got it. Thank you so much. And everything that you just described, has that resulted in more non-competitive small purchase contracts being awarded to MWBEs or contracts overall?
As my colleague mentioned earlier, I think she would touch on the point of non-competitive component.
Thank you. Yes, the rate of awards has been fairly steady. I don't think we've had too much challenge with the use of the procurement method. And I think because the MWB non-competitive small purchase method allows agencies to make direct awards to MWBEs, and the cycle time is a little bit faster with the use of the method, the contracting agencies are steadily using the award method.
Thank you. The city is largely subject to lowest responsible bidder standards for city contracts. What obstacles does this present in terms of awarding more contracts to MWBEs? And then I have two follow-up questions. To what extent do solicitations play a role in the ability of city agencies to award contracts to MWBEs? And how frequently does MOCS work with city agencies to ensure their solicitations are appropriately scoped?
Thank you, Chair Juan. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the mute component. Please forgive me. Okay, so I'm gonna step in and tackle this one. As we've spoken about previously with your office and you and the Contracts Committee generally, the city itself is very committed to reviewing the antiquated procurement rules to reform and modernize the process and best use technology and leverage what technology enables us to do. And part of this means utilizing the non-competitive small purchase method that Deputy Director Kwan just spoke about. We also have some other tools that we are continuing to hope to explore, such as MWBE pre-qualified lists. But we want to do more. We want to continue to push the envelope here, and we're really looking forward to working with your office and the other council members' office to really inform what we do in this space in the time to come. And I will address the follow-up questions as well. And I think the first follow-up questions was respect to the solicitations and what role does that play with respect to the city agencies awarding contracts to MWBEs. Here at MOCS, we're committed to reviewing the entire procurement process, including the procurement processes that MWBEs encounter. And we want to look throughout the whole process to find opportunities for MWBEs to compete for contracts and be awarded contracts. And then finally, there was one more follow-up question, and I think it was respect to how MOCS works with the city agencies to ensure that their solicitations are properly scoped. And so what we do here at MOX is we work hand in hand with all the city agencies at all stages of the procurement process to ensure that they're following the rules, they're using the tools that are available to them. And part of this is making sure that the agencies are best using the Passport, the procurement tool, which is Passport. So that's, we're continuing to do that, and we look forward to this work to come.
Thank you. My last question is about the disparity study. So Local Law 129 of 2005 included a requirement for SBS and MOX to commission a disparity study to update the city's MWBE goals at least every 2 years. And the last disparity study was completed in 2018, 4 years ago. Do you have a vendor who's currently working on that next disparity study? And do you know when we can expect that to be completed?
Chair Juan, if I may, I'm going to defer to my partner, Deputy Commissioner Gross, on this particular question.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this question about the disparity study. I'd like to share some history and some details to help answer this question. So the city conducted a disparity study in 2005, which supported the program changes made by Local Law 129 of 2005. MOX next released a data analysis in 2011, which was the basis for the program amendments enacted by Local Law 1 of 2013. And we published a disparity study in 2018 that provided a basis for the updates made by Local Laws 174 and 176 of 2019. I share this history to illustrate that although the cadence has sometimes been extended, we have performed reliable disparity studies that have allowed the city to maintain this important policy tool. In our last study, which was published in 2018, our vendor MGT, in collaboration with the city, engaged in the following outreach efforts. We reached over 100,000 businesses and business groups by email or phone, and engaged the business community through meetings held in each of the 5 boroughs and through a disparity study website launched specifically for this purpose. We conducted a comprehensive outreach campaign that also included digital and print ads in ethnic media sources, radio ads, postings on social media, as well as printed materials distributed at public events. Outreach was conducted in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Haitian Creole, as well as English. And as a result of these efforts, over 5,000 business owners and representatives provided direct input into the study's research and findings through surveys, interviews, focus groups, and testimonies. And of those, about 60% of the respondents were MWBEs. We're doing all that we can to select an excellent vendor for the next disparity study efficiently. That procurement is currently in development and will be released in Passport soon. And we expect that that vendor will help us produce a valid, reliable, and legally defensible study to determine what this program should be in the near future.
Thank you, Commissioner Gross. I know that the council member, Justin Brennan's legislation that's being introduced today would require us to use the most available data, since the last disparity study used data from 2015. Our city is consistently changing, as well as COVID-19 has impacted our businesses in a way that it's going to completely differ. And the data has to be from the most recent time. We cannot be using outdated data, especially in a time like now. So what I'm hearing you say is that, one, you do not have a vendor currently.
Not yet.
And yes?
Not yet, no.
Okay. And you do not know when it is expected to be completed then? Because that was my question for the next disparity study.
We expect to select the vendor over the next quarter, and our goal is to complete the disparity study as efficiently as possible, hopefully over the course of FY23.
Okay, and can you commit right now publicly on what year data you would like to use for this study, so that we're not using outdated data, especially because MWBEs have been impacted so severely by COVID-19?
So transparency is really important to us, and I think it's a real strength of the city's MWBE program. SBS, MOX, and the agencies publish procurement plans annually, compliance reports quarterly, and those include robust data appendices on this portion of the city's spend. So the disparity study will include valuable insights, including the presence of willing and available firms in the city's entire geographic market and their participation, their experience in attempting to participate in city contracting. But it's definitely not the only way to understand how the programs and initiatives that are part of the MWBE program are running. Much of that data is available to council and the public, including our certified firms, at all times at the click of a mouse through SBS's website and MOX's website and the MWBE program tools included there. So for the disparity study, we want to define a study period that has complete data. It'll be, the end of a fiscal year, and to define that to allow the study to proceed as efficiently as possible. And again, we'll work with council to align that expectation with what's practicable given the data that will be available to the vendor at the time the study commences.
Deputy Commissioner Gross, even if the data is available at the click of a mouse, it is still by law that you are required, the administration is required to produce the disparity study every 2 years. And these disparity studies are the only way for the city to update its MWBE goals. So it's imperative that we receive up-to-date data on how the city programs and initiatives support the MWBE's working. So we look forward to continue to keeping you accountable. And I will now pass it back to the host, Alex Polinoff, and then Councilmember Menon will begin her questions as well.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll turn it to Chair Menon for questions.
Thank you so much. So I am deeply concerned about a lack of outreach by the City of New York on MWBEs because these numbers are frankly abysmal. So I want to drill down on specifics. How much money is being spent to advertising and promote MWBE opportunities in the city? In what publications are you advertising, and in how many languages?
So I can speak a bit about SBS's spending on promotion of the program, Chair Menon, but if you're speaking about the advertising on specific procurements, I may pass that to my colleagues or pledge to get back to you with additional information. In FY21, SBS spent $117,000 on digital ads to attract MWBEs to the program. We have found that Google search ads are very efficient and an effective way to spread information about the program. So when folks are searching MWBE, they're searching for information that can help them respond to their particular challenges. Our program materials are presented as an answer. So we're doing digital ads through Google, through social media and other means to promote the program. But I would say advertising, paid advertising is not the most powerful tool that we have for outreach. I believe that is partnership. We work with the nonprofits that are funded through the MWBE Leadership Associations, supported by the City Council, with the vendors who operate our business solution centers, with our certification partners, both in government and in the private sector, and with MWBEs themselves and industry groups to promote the program. Moreover, our city agencies are doing outreach to businesses in the industries in which they generally contract to identify potential MWBEs and sharing those with SBS as well. So just to give you a sense, in FY21, we participated in 163 workshops and events with partners, like the types of partners that I have described, as well as city council members and other local elected officials to promote the MWBE program.
So with all due respect, $117,000 to promote something as important as MWBEs is far too little. What languages are you disseminating the events that you mentioned, and what languages are you disseminating materials in And is there city agency staff, whether it be SBS or another agency, what different languages are being spoken at the various events you mentioned?
So I'd like to follow up with you with specifics of, because I don't want to give a general answer. I know that we have recently done events focused on the Haitian Creole speaking community, the Bangladeshi community speaking Bengali, many outreach events in Spanish, but I can give you more of that information, Councilmember Menon. In addition, we have translated all of our MWBE certification webinars into the 10 languages required by the city's language access law. And again, we're seeking partnership on promoting those resources so that we're able to recruit firms to consider certification and go through the certification process. In addition, the digital application for certification that I described is in a system called SBS Connect, and that can be translated by any user to provide language access.
And the other thing I would say, thank you, yes, please do get that to us. The other thing I would say is, I think you mentioned 136 events. That's far too little for a program as important as this. By comparison, in 6 months on the census, we did over 1,000 events. Are you doing events with every single one of the 76 bids so that you're reaching all of their merchants?
Because we're at SBS and we're partners in the agency that helps to manage the bids, we're able to reach the bids efficiently through the regular bid bulletins, through the bid meetings. So our neighborhood development division welcomes our partnership there. It was 163 events in FY21. And of course, we're always looking to do more. We're innovating in different types of events. This fiscal year, taking the SBS mobile unit around the city, and we would absolutely welcome the partnership of city council members in inviting us to their districts to reach the firms that are located there as well.
A couple follow-up questions. Does SBS or MOX proactively reach out to the thousands of MWBEs that haven't been awarded city contracts to let them know that there are opportunities available?
We have a robust day-to-day working relationship with the MWBEs in our certified pool.
Is that a yes or a no? I just want to understand for the record. Are you all reaching out and letting them know or not?
Absolutely. Yes.
So they are all being notified.
So depending on the type of solicitation, if it's an MWBE non-competitive solicitation, only the MWBEs that are selected by that agency's program team to be included in the solicitation receive notice. But other than that, we are reaching out to MWBEs in multiple ways to share information on open solicitations, whether those are posted on agency websites, in Passport, flagged in City Record Online. We're providing technical assistance for firms who want to compete for those contracts. MWBEs can access up to 3 technical assistance sessions for each solicitation to which they're preparing a response or a bid to ensure that they're responding in a way that will ensure their proposal is considered. Yes, so lots of outreach around those opportunities to our entire certified pool.
So is Passport automatically notifying certified or licensed vendors when a new solicitation is available?
Kim, do you want to speak to Passport notifications?
Yes. So yes, within the procurement system Passport, the MWBEs who are enrolled in Passport are receiving notifications for open solicitations available for them to bid on, propose to, and hopefully be awarded those contracts.
Okay, and before I go on, I just want to say we've been joined by Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, who's on the phone, who's on the Zoom as well. Welcome. A couple other questions. So one thing I found problematic is there don't seem to be detailed information available to every city commissioner on MWBEs and the exact scope of services, their website, photos so that we make it as easy as possible for every city agency to take advantage of MWBEs? Is this information available, for example, on every city agency website? What information are you disseminating to each commissioner to help to improve the MWBE uptake numbers?
So we maintain an online directory of certified firms, nyc.gov/BUI or by certified. And that website includes a searchable database with a profile of every certified MWBE in the city. Those profiles include contact information, business descriptions describing that firm's expertise, a primary NAICS code, NIGP codes describing what goods or services they provide, information on whether they are signatory to a union contract, information on their bonding, if they're a construction contract, and information on past contracts on which they've performed. And we've been working to improve that tool, and it's available for public review.
If I can suggest a couple suggestions, that I'm familiar with that. The problem with it is, like, if you want to, for example, hire a website designer, or you want to hire something, whatever it might be, there should be photos, there should be detailed links to websites, there should be photos of past work. We want to make it as easy as possible for every agency to be able to access that. So I think that would be an important change. I want to get into the Controller 2020 report that we referenced in our opening statements. The details of 5 agencies that dealt exclusively with non-MWBEs during COVID-related contexts were Health and Hospitals, the Parks Department, Financial Information Services Agency, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, and SBS. So this is unbelievably unacceptable. The fact that the SBS agency that has oversight over MWBEs itself was on this list of agencies. Why were no contracts awarded by SBS to MWBEs for COVID-19 related contracts?
So I'd like to look into this more closely. As you're aware, Chair Menon, SBS's budget includes funding for many pass-through entities that are not SBS's core work, such as the Navy Yard, EDC, NYC and Co, and others. SBS, for its own work, was not a significant consumer or user of the emergency contracting method. And on its local law 1 contracts for FY21, I believe we achieved 94% MWBE utilization on our contracts covered by local law 1. So you're absolutely right. We take this incredibly seriously. I'm not actually sure to what set of contracts or contract the comptroller was referring, but I'm happy to look into it and get back to you with that detail. It absolutely was not part of SBS's core work of service delivery to workers, businesses, or our NDD team.
Oh, yeah, please do get that to the committee. I'm going to ask one more question. I have additional questions, but I want to turn it over to Councilmember Moya next, as well as our colleagues, to ask questions. So last question, do you have an estimate on the total number of small businesses or business enterprises in general that could be eligible in the city that are not pursuing the program?
I don't have exactly that number for you. We did do an analysis that leads us to believe that there are about 1,300 firms in our geographic market that are currently certified by the state or another governmental partner and have never been certified by the city. So those are the firms that we are hoping to reach efficiently through the Blueprint Initiative, increasing reciprocity between the city and state. But I'm happy to try to get the larger number for you as a follow-up to the hearing.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it back to Committee Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Menon. We'll now turn it to Chair Moya for questions.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, for your testimony today. So can you just give the certification breakdown of MWBEs by ethnicity, Latino, Asian, African American? Do you have that?
I do. I have percentages. I think I included percentages in the testimony, but are you looking for numbers as well?
Yeah, I'm looking for numbers.
Okay, just one moment and I'll turn to that for you.
And while you're looking for that, in the same vein of that question, what are the geographic breakdown of the MWBEs contracted during COVID? And were you targeting local companies that were embedded in the communities that were most impacted by COVID?
Okay, I'll give the answer about the composition of the certified pool. And then if one of my colleagues at MOX or OMWBE can share those additional details about the emergency contract utilization, that would be helpful, or we'll follow up. Okay, so of the 10,665 MWBE firms that were certified at the close of FY21, 2,261 were Asian owned, 3,300 were Black owned, 1,847 were Hispanic owned, 3,252 were owned by non-minority women, and 5 were owned by Native Americans. Of the women-owned businesses, you asked about location, actually. So let me go to that.
Yeah, the demographics of the
Yes,
contracts that were awarded.
At the end of FY21, we had 7% of the certified pool located in the Bronx. That was 734 firms. 18% of the certified pool located in Brooklyn, 1,869 firms. 21% of our certified pool in Manhattan, that's 2,292 firms. 15% of the certified pool in Queens, 1,637 firms, and 3% of our certified firms in Staten Island for 283 certified MWBEs. 36% of the certified pool at the end of FY21 was located outside of the 5 boroughs. Our program's geographic market includes Long Island and counties in near New Jersey, and also in Westchester and near upstate New York. So the requirement is that the firms have a nexus with the city of New York, but they're not required to be located within the 5 boroughs to be eligible for certification.
Got it. And I want to go back, and I'm sorry if this question was already asked. I had to hop off for a vote, but I just want to go back to the outreach, in particular to mostly immigrant communities. My district was the epicenter of the pandemic. How did you focus your outreach for those disproportionate impacted communities during COVID-19? Can you just run me through what was the outreach that was done?
Yes, I would say that definitely during the pandemic, I mean, we didn't abandon any of the tools that we've used previously in attempting to reach firms, but we really did double down on partnerships as a way of reaching those communities. So we were producing, toolkits with the information, whether it was about changing regulations, financing assistance programs, other supports for small business survival and worker survival during that time. And we were sharing those toolkits with hundreds of partners across the city for them to turnkey that information to their constituencies through the types of channels that work best for them. And I think those partnerships were absolutely essential to our success in spreading the word of our programming during that time. But we always want to do better and do more. And I think this is not just a problem of the MWBE program. It's not just a challenge for SBS, how to create deep knowledge about the availability of government services for the communities that need them most is a pervasive problem for government. And we absolutely welcome creative input from the council, professional advisement, and we're constantly trying to innovate internally to improve on this. We do communicate with our MWBEs often through email. We are in touch with all of them at least monthly through email, and also by advertising events and working with them deeply to overcome challenges that they're having.
So during the pandemic, you said you offered a variety of programs to help MWBEs get certified and access to opportunities. Have you suspended or significantly reduced the programs that were offered during the pandemic?
No, not at all. In fact, we increased our programming during the pandemic by, as I described, adding additional content for our selling to government, business education programs, by launching the MWBE Mentor Program to create a space for peer learning within the program. And we really have continued to deliver services remotely at the same or a higher rate than pre-pandemic.
What was the budget that was spent in offering these services during the pandemic in multiple languages? In specifically, as this was happening, the city was offering small businesses to apply through their portal to if they had a factory or a company that would make face masks, right? You were told to go onto the website. We found that it was very difficult for many companies who would apply through that website to even get a response back in a timely fashion. What was the budget that was spent to go into communities of color, immigrant communities, to let them know in their language? Or you mentioned advertising on ethnic media. What was the budget that was spent on that?
So the portion of that spend that I will have the most insight into is the actual cost of translating all of the certification materials and our certification webinars into the 10 languages required by the city's language access law. So I'm happy to get back to you with that detail. And
I just want to go a little further than just like the translation part, but like what was the budget for? You mentioned that you were going to ethnic media to get the word out. What was that budget?
So our spend was the $117,000 that I described, but I'm sure there's additional budget details for the larger agency spend. And if you wouldn't mind, I will circle back to our executive office, our marketing and comms team, and try to follow up with those details for you.
Yeah, I just like to know, because I know, yes, it's 117, but what I'm saying is, what was, out of the 117, what was spent on advertisement in communities of color? Because, obviously you're required by law to translate the materials, but that doesn't mean that you're reaching out to the LEP communities.
Right.
So for me, I really want to know what that breakdown was of money that the city, SBS in particular, had spent on advertising in communities of color where they know that you're going to have the most traction to get my MWBEs and immigrant-owned businesses to identify what is being offered to them. So I really like that breakdown, because I do agree with Chair Menon that 117 is just not enough. I mean, that's just, it's abysmal. That should be what we target maybe in one district to do that. We have to make those real investments if we ever want to reach the communities that have the business owners that want to get there, because the certification process in and of itself is very daunting, right? And I refer back to what I said in my remarks earlier, was that, the survey that found only 40% of MWBE certified businesses applied to SBS business continuity loans, because very few of them received a loan. and they know it's just not, worth the time and energy for them to do it. So if you can just get that for me, that would be helpful. Because or else if there's not that investment that's being made, how do people know where to apply and what to apply to? And I'm gonna just ask you one more question, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. You had mentioned about the different areas that you're in, but according to your website, the SBS Procurement Technical Assistance Center program, it only assists businesses in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. Is that true?
So it's not true that we only assist them, but our technical catchment area does not include those boroughs, and I can explain why. So the PTAC programs are funded by a combination of city funds and federal funds. And the terms of the federal grant determines each PTAC program's catchment area. So a great nonprofit partner, Sobro, is the PTAC grantee for the Bronx, and LaGuardia Community College is the PTAC grantee for Queens. However, as a citywide agency, we do market our PTAC services citywide, and we do serve businesses from all boroughs that are referred to us or find us. So we are providing service to businesses in the Bronx and Queens, although there are other PTAC programs that are the service providers of record for those boroughs.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner, for that. I'm going to now turn it back to our chairs, to our council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moya. We will now call on council members in the order that they've used the Zoom raise hand function for questions. As a reminder to council members who are still here, if you'd like to ask a question and you have not yet used the Zoom raise hand function, please feel free to do so now. Council members, as a reminder, you will have a total of 5 minutes to ask your question and receive an answer from the panelists. The Sergeant at Arms will keep a timer and will let you know once your time is up. Once I've called on you, please wait until the Sergeant has announced you may begin before asking your questions. First up, we will hear from Councilmember Brewer, followed by Majority Whip Brooks Powers, and then Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Brewer, you may begin when ready.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of the chairs. When I was borough president, I tried really hard to be responsive to minority women business owners. Let me tell you the problem. And I guess this is pandemic, but it's pre and post. If you want to order furniture, you got one furniture provider. If you want to order paper, you have one paper provider. So is there some hope in the future that we could break up these contracts? I know you talked about the 25 million, but that's the problem. So in the end, you're scrambling to try to find somebody to be able to purchase in a way that you want to do so. So how do you answer that question? Am I wrong about that? It's back to this issue. I've been listening to this discussion for, I don't know, 30 years. And the issue is that we end up with, we have to pay less to Staples or the furniture provider, rather than try to negotiate with what I would consider firms that either may give you better product or smaller, and the ones who, how do you answer that, number one? Number two, what is your, maybe you talked about this and I missed it. I'm on 3 different Zooms right now, trying to pay attention. But one of the issues is there are people who try to game the system. Did that happen more during the pandemic? Do you catch them? What is your rate of that issue? Because that is a concern. People say, you know, I'm the daughter, I'm in charge, but it's really still the father. And then the third issue is somehow Michael Garner at the MTA is the maverick at this. He's got the MTA numbers extremely high. Are you in touch with him? What does he do differently? And how can we be more? I'm going to be honest, like Michael Garner. Thank you very much.
So I'm trying to think of the order in which to tackle those questions. I think when you're talking about there being one large vendor for various types of goods, are you referring to the city's requirements contracts?
Yep.
So we are working to support MWBE firms in participating in those requirements contracts, but also looking closely as those contracts expire at what availability is in the pool and how agencies can better take advantage of the MWBE availability. We've also in upgrading the online directory improved a lot of challenges with the way the MWBE firms are coded. So it's easier for agencies to identify them, to find them when they're looking to purchase a good or a service of a particular kind. So that is going to ensure that MWBEs who do go through the work of certification, are not invisible in the system and can be found.
So that's not happening now, is what you're saying. I was begging when I was borough president to try to get, and I don't know, I'm sure in the city council, we had HR people who were dying to do the right thing, and we just couldn't. It wasn't possible. So that will change, is what you're telling me? I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
It has changed. I would say the online directory now, it's easier to search that pool to determine the true capacity and expertise of those firms. We're allowing, for example, for firms that sell goods to have 100 NIGP codes so they can describe those goods at a fine level of detail so that you can identify them. Before, you might have needed to search with a keyword and then, a NIGP code, and those lists might have been over and under or under inclusive. We've cleaned up those codes and there are no gaps in codes for any of the firms in the online directory. So I believe that should be a major improvement. In terms of people trying to game the system, we try to share with businesses what the eligibility criteria are for the program so that they can self-assess their eligibility before doing the work of applying, because we don't want any business to do the work of pulling together those answers and documentation and have their time wasted. But there are close cases. And I think what you've described is an example of those close cases where there's a family-owned business, where perhaps the woman owner of record owns 51% and 49% is with, a spouse or another family member who's male-owned. In those instances, we are auditing or doing, at least a desk audit for all of those businesses to determine if that woman owner has and is exercising day-to-day ownership, operation, control of the firm. So I don't want to say that those applicants are trying to game the system, right? They may think that because they have 51% ownership on the shares, that they're eligible for the program. But if that woman owner is not exercising control, signing contracts, signing payroll, then they may not be eligible for the program. And so we use close scrutiny of those cases to make those determinations and ensure that we're providing a legitimate pool of woman-owned firms for the.
Okay, is that
Time expired.
Okay. All right, then you have one more quick question about Michael Garner.
Do you want to speak to that, G?
I don't disagree with Councilmember Brewer's comment about Michael Garner. I do just wanted to provide a quick, to elaborate on the question about the purchasing. And so I think one of the good things, especially supported by the Executive Order 59, where agencies are really encouraged wherever they can, especially for goods purchases, 500,000 and under, to utilize the MWB non-competitive small purchase method. And so especially for goods purchases like the paper purchases that you mentioned, even for select furniture purchases, we have discussed with DCAS some allowances for furniture purchases off of not from the requirements contracts, but to the extent possible, we are encouraging agencies to use the MWB non-competitive small purchase method as the first procurement method that they can, where there's MWBEs who sell those particular goods that is identified as the need.
What about Michael Garner? Who's going to talk about Michael Garner?
What is the specific question about Michael Garner?
He's really got the MTA at a huge number in terms of percentage of MWBE. So does anybody talk to him about how he does it? I don't mean to be rude because I know you're working at it, but he's like a master at it. And he goes to every event. You can't get rid of him.
I mean, I can't speak specifically, but we are in communication with him.
He does. I mean, we need the same as the city. That's what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
Yep. We are in communication with Michael Garner, and happy to follow up with him additionally for more suggestions. We're always open to the idea, whether from Garner or from the council, in creative ways to improve our our MWBE utilization, but happy to follow up.
Okay, I'd love to be part of that meeting, or maybe the committee also, because he's been advising, I think, and I would love to see us follow some of his game plans. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Councilmember Brewer. Next, we will hear from Majority Whip Brooks Powers, followed by Councilmember Williams. Majority Whip Brooks Powers, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chairs Menon, Moya, and Juan for convening this important joint hearing. I was pretty excited to see that we would be talking about MWBEs, as many know that I'm a staunch advocate around this space. And as we all know, COVID has devastated communities across the city, particularly communities of color, and we are still struggling to recover. My district, particularly Rockaway, was extremely hit hard, and the impact on our local economy has been profound. Some businesses have bounced back, but many of our storefronts are still shuttered, and business owners have faced persistent setbacks. I'm pleased that these committees are convening to discuss COVID's impact on our local businesses, and I have a couple of questions I just wanted to touch on. First, with respect to the administration prioritizing underserved communities to receive small business opportunity fund support, what outreach to date has the agency done and plan to do to conduct to notify the public about this fund? How many businesses is the agency projected to support across the boroughs? When will the funds be available? I'd also like a commitment today from the administration to provide the data once these businesses have been identified, the breakdown in terms of what borough, what districts. And then many of our cities, MWBEs, have never been awarded city contracts. So what outreach is the agencies conducting to attract these businesses? And if so, how are the agencies working to connect with harder impacted communities, which I know SBS is no stranger to and has worked collaboratively with me in the past, even with the JFK redevelopment, knowing that there's a great need for a lot of our smaller businesses that may not have engaged with the city before to get some additional support. So interested in understanding what the city is doing to address that.
Thank you, Council Member, for that question. I want to ask a clarifying question for the portion of your question that was focused on a fund. Which specific fund are you referring to?
The Small Business Opportunity Fund.
So I think you're referring to an item in the blueprint that is prospective work for SBS. Our MWBEs will be invited to participate in that program, but it's not an MWBE program specific intervention, unlike the contract financing and loan fund, for example. So I'm happy to pledge to follow up. Our IGA team is listening today. We'll get back to you with information about a planned rollout of that fund, but it will target businesses, including our certified pool, but not limited to our certified MWBEs. And I think the remainder of your question was focused on, you had questions about outreach. I did want to share that we do look at the distribution of our certified pool by every political subdivision, including by council district. And in FY21, there were 150 certified firms in your district, 31. And those firms in FY21 won contracts valued at $7,456,000. And that would not have included, those are city contracts alone, those wouldn't have included the JFK related contracts that you referred to that are funded through other mechanisms. So these are just local law 1. And we are reaching out to those firms in the ways that we have described through partnership with your office, with nonprofit partners, our bids, our chambers of commerce, through community and ethnic media, and through email, email from the passport system, email from SBS with telephone follow-up to ensure that they're aware of opportunities.
And thank you for that, Deputy Commissioner, and it's great to see you also. And I definitely would love to partner with the agency in terms of the outreach as it pertains to Southeast Queens when you're coming into the district, and even looking to see how we can maybe do events targeting the MWBE communities across the city. I'd love to be a part of that as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Majority Whip Brooks Powers. We will now move to Councilmember Williams for questions.
Starting time.
Thank you, chairs. So many of my questions actually have been asked, so I do not want to be repetitive. I'll just say that I look forward to working with the chairs here and the administration. A lot of my concerns, of course, rest in diversity within diversity and being really proactive around how we support MWBEs with some of the major projects, even if it's a state project. I know sometimes the different layers of government can get a little complicated. I also want to say that in my experience, we found that the city actually does a much better job than the state and the Port Authority. So kudos to you for that. And I think some of the things that Councilmember Brewer mentioned with Michael Garner, I think the same could be said for a lot of SCA projects. And a part of that is the fact that the MTA and SCA and other initiatives really provide the space to build capacity and opportunities to get capital, which has been one of the significant barriers for a lot of MWBEs. Also, the continued issue around needing to have a certain threshold around bonding and insurance, which has also been a little bit problematic for a lot of the MWBEs. And so I'll just stop there and say I look forward to working with you guys. I don't have any specific questions. Agree with a lot of the sentiments that were raised here and really want to work with you all to figure out a way to address this issue. It is clearly a systemic issue that we have not addressed adequately in meeting our thresholds for 30% MWBE.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. We'll now move back to Chair Wan for additional questions.
I want to acknowledge Councilmember Mealy for joining. I do not have additional questions, so I will pass it on to Chair Menon to see if she has any additional questions.
Thank you so much. Yes, I do have an additional question. I just want to make sure that MWBE information is being disseminated at every single public-facing city center. So all the various centers that the City of New York operates, making sure that MWBE information is there. Is it also available at the 59 community boards, at the 76 bids, making sure we're using every tool in our toolbox. If that's not happening, want to ensure that we get a public commitment today that the administration will do that moving forward and not just disseminate information, but make sure that there is true language access and equity and that we're disseminating information in a multitude of languages, more quite frankly than the 10 languages required, given that over 200 languages are spoken in the city.
It's a great point, Councilmember Menon. We certainly are distributing through all of our business solution centers, our workforce centers, and through many of our close program partners, such as Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. I believe we've done some dissemination in partnership with the City Commission on Human Rights, but you're right to ask for a comprehensive kind of survey of that. And I think it's a great idea and something we can work to survey and then shore up.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Menon. If Chair Moya is still here and has additional questions, please let us know. If not, we will now move to the public testimony portion of the hearing.
If I could just say a quick word to the question that Councilmember Brewer had.
Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to add that our leadership at OMWBE meets, as it relates to MTA, meets regularly with the MTA team on a biweekly basis whenever they have their New York City, New York State State of Black Affairs meeting. So we participate in that. And wanted to add also that in that partnership the city has really looked at the MTA program in part to create our own models, for example, the DDC mentorship program. And finally, just wanted to add that, part of our legislative agenda includes increasing the threshold to 1.5 million. And so that's something that we want to achieve, and it would be something that's in alignment with a number of other agencies. And so we work very collaboratively with MTA, with SCA, and look at where there are opportunities to leverage learning from them to apply to our programs. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And actually, we'll turn to one more round of questions from Councilmember Brewer.
Starting.
I want to thank you for that. I just want to say the way that Michael Garner operates is I could not get him off a phone of a bid or a Chamber of Commerce. He just pops up everywhere. And that gives the MTA positive feelings about the NBWB, as well as the fact that people are listening and then they say, oh, maybe I should participate. So that's what I'm suggesting. I mean, it's a different kind of outreach, but he shows up on every single phone call that a bid or a chamber is doing. So I would just suggest that. And that might be one way to do the outreach. It doesn't cost anything except a huge amount of time. And at the end of the day, you're like, we got to sign up for the MTA's program. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brewer, and thank you, chairs, and to the administration for testifying today. We will now move on to the public portion of the hearing. I'd like to remind everyone that unlike in our typical council hearings, we will be calling on individuals one by one to testify. Today, we will be limiting each panelist's speaking time to 3 minutes. So please begin once the sergeant has called the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should continue to use the Zoom raise hand function, and we will call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the sergeant at arms will set the timer and give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. I would like to now welcome Meredith Phillips to testify. Meredith Phillips, you may begin when the sergeant's called the time.
Starting time.
Thank you, chairs and committee members, for the opportunity to submit testimony today. I'm Meredith Phillips Almeida, and I currently serve as the director of the New York City Small Business Resource Network. Launched in October 2020, the NYC Small Business Resource Network, or SBRN, is a comprehensive approach to strengthening New York City's economy and accelerating the recovery of small businesses impacted by COVID-19. Our approach to business assistance incorporates consistent field outreach across all boroughs, personalized support tailored to specific business challenges, and connections to curated resources from both the public and the private sectors. Our public-private partnership includes service delivery by the 5 borough chambers of commerce with support from the Partnership for NYC, EDC, SBS, and it's funded by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation with additional support from council discretionary funding in this fiscal year. So our team of business recovery specialists, now almost 40 strong, deploys daily to communities across all the boroughs, reaching many businesses and business owners who are often disconnected from information about programs and services available to them, or who have difficulty carving out time in their schedules to navigate the complex landscape of business support services on their own. To date, SBRN has touched almost 28,000 businesses over the past 18 months, and we've provided in-depth guidance and support to over 8,800 businesses, with 77% of those being MWBEs. We hear things like access to financing, marketing assistance, pro bono legal advice, general business coaching. All of these are some of the most common requests surfaced during our encounters with small business owners. Over the past year and a half, of course, recovery specialists have spent a significant amount of time just helping business owners navigating the ever-changing landscape of COVID regulations and guidelines acting upon them. But we also uncovered a pressing need for support in creating and implementing digital tools to keep businesses competitive in an evolving marketplace. Recall how quickly shutdowns happened in the spring of 2020, how small businesses got incredibly creative to find ways to continue to sort of sell food, drink, and products, and how New Yorkers tried our very best to continue to support our favorite local shops and eateries during that time. Often the only way to do that was to find that shop online somewhere, social media, website, delivery platform. That support was a bridge over some of the most difficult months for small businesses. And if you did not have a digital presence, you completely missed out on that bridge. So SBRN responded quickly by creating our open and online program to create websites and e-commerce sites, provide SEO consultations, and develop branding toolkits for use in digital space for small businesses who were not there. The Partnership for NYC helped to raise $800,000 to support that effort. Today, we've completed about 400 projects with a target of 800 complete by June, and 90% of those projects are for MWBEs. This kind of support in entering digital space remains crucial for MWBEs and legacy businesses. I would say that an emerging need is also the ongoing support and technical assistance once you have those tools so that businesses can realize the full potential of them. And I have a little bit more testimony, but I will submit that to you.
Thank you, Meredith Phillips. As a reminder to the members of the public who are still on, if you have submitted testimony or you wish to testify today, please use the Zoom raise hand function now. If not, we will move to the chairs for their closing remarks. Okay, seeing none, let's move to Chair Wan.
I actually have a question for Meredith. Meredith, could you share with us what kind of digital services or digital assistance you did receive from SBS so far, and what is available so that we can have an idea in scope? Because I saw that firsthand in my district as well, where small businesses were relying on the bids or the Chamber of Commerce in Queens to help them, and there was only one paid professional to help them create a website or help them understand how they can use which food app to help them deliver.
Sure. Just to clarify the question, are you asking what services we utilized from the city, or? So we actually created our own program to build websites directly. I mean, it was an emerging need and we needed to address it quickly. And the Partnership for NYC responded by raising funds, and we created our own program to build websites for businesses that needed them throughout the pandemic.
Meredith, was that because the city was not offering these services that you had to step in? Because that's what we saw in Queens.
Yeah, at the time, there was not a program offered by the city to build websites directly for small businesses.
Is there something offered now for small business owners from the city?
Related to building websites?
Yeah.
I believe that there is something in the works that hasn't launched yet. And I know we've been in a number of conversations with partners at agencies about sort of this emerging need, not just the building of the website, but what comes after, the technical assistance that's needed to help the business sort of use that tool. And I know that agencies are talking about that now, but I can't speak to sort of what's in motion.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay. Councilmember Menon or Moya, did you have any other questions before I close for my part?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank my committee staff for hosting this hearing, as well as my joint chairs here for Councilmember Menon on the Committee of Small Businesses, as well as Councilmember Moya for the Subcommittee on COVID Recovery and Resiliency. And I want to also thank the administration for coming to testify and for sharing all of their knowledge and insights on what is currently happening. And I want to thank all of my fellow colleagues, council members who have joined us today, as well as the general public who came to take their time to testify. I just want to acknowledge that for the time that we are on this call, from 10 a.m. until it was perceivably potentially until 5 p.m., that when we did reach out to small businesses, especially minority and women-owned businesses, they replied back on saying how this time is not something that is feasible for them, especially on a Monday during lunch hour, where during this time they are either serving lunch or servicing people who have come to their businesses during lunchtime, during their breaks, as well as preparing for dinner hour, their dinner shifts. So I just want to acknowledge how it's going to be really important that we continue to do outreach, as Councilmember Menon has said, in multiple languages, as well as in different avenues and mediums so that people can participate. So we will continue to push to have written testimonies brought in, especially for those who could not participate this way. And I also want to acknowledge Meredith Phillips, who came here to raise something that we did not get to address directly with Deputy Director Gross, who had to move on, about digital services for the city. Because because of the pandemic, we have accelerated the need for digital access and digital literacy for our small businesses, especially when the small businesses were so strapped that they were under-resourced, not just financially, but also in human resources. Now, small business owners, especially women and minorities, were doing it all. They were servicing their small business and trying to figure out how to build a website, figure out how to use all of these different apps and compete in this competitive landscape digitally in a way that they have never had to before. So I look forward to hearing all of your replies for the follow-ups and continue to work with all of my partners in the City Council and in the administration to make sure that our small businesses are thriving, because our local small businesses, the mom and pop shops, are the ones that really bring culture and richness to our city and our districts, and continue to make sure that our local dollars stay local. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and I will pass it on to Councilmember Menon to share her closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I really want to thank Chair Juan and Chair Moya and all of my colleagues who were on, who asked such important questions. Thank you to the administration, and thank you to the council staff for all their hard work in this hearing. As Chair Juan talked about, the fact that this hearing was being held, obviously it needs to be held during the middle of the day. We're not saying otherwise, but it's very onerous on small businesses to be able to come and testify. And I think sort of endemic to the problem that we have is pointed out that we don't have a lot of testimony today. This really gets to the point of a lack of awareness about MWBEs. It would have been terrific if the thousands of businesses that are women and minority owned who have not received these opportunities would have been able to testify, but they really don't know about the opportunity. So how are they then going to come and testify? So that's really one of the fundamental problems, is a lack of outreach. So I'm really urging the new administration to turn a new page on MWBEs. This isn't the opportunity that we sorely need to have an equitable recovery in our city, and to make sure that we're doing everything possible to support MWBEs. So we've asked for a lot of information from the administration. So we really expect that we're going to get a detailed and fulsome report of the information we requested. And I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues to make sure that we are doing everything possible in terms of oversight over the MWBE program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Menon. I guess we'll turn it back to Chair Moya for closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you again to both my colleagues and Chair Juan and Chair Menon for this very important hearing that we had today. Look, I think if anything, what we've learned is that the previous administration just totally missed the mark on communities of color, immigrant communities that suffered through the pandemic. We have a responsibility as a city to do better. I think this hearing is one that really is an opportunity for us to really get the information that we asked for, and really move forward in a much more open and transparent process, where we can look to really help the communities that were most impacted by this, to really make a difference if we want to see some real changes happening here in the city, that brings back the economic recovery for all the small business owners, MWBEs in the city of New York. So thank you very much, and thank you to the staff for doing such a tremendous job in helping us get through this hearing today. Thank you.
Okay, Chair Juan, you can do the honors.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We are now adjourned. Have a good rest of the day.